We are live.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 1455 interview. I'm Sean Murphy, the executive director. If you haven't had a chance to check this out yet, it's our newest endeavor. A couple times a week, we're talking to awesome authors, take a peek behind the cover and see what makes them tick in this fast-moving 14-minute and 55-second interview. We're having a lot of fun with it. And if you haven't seen one yet, go to our YouTube page. We've got our back. We're starting to stack up a bunch of interviews already, so it's really exciting. Speaking of excitement, we have a local legend in the house. My tremendous honor, genuine honor, to bring in our pal Lou Bayard, who has been involved with our first two literary festivals, which is very gracious of him.
Yeah.
And, you know, people that know him know that he's a remarkable writer. He's an all-around great guy. And I've been looking forward to hearing the answers to some of these questions. So let me introduce him, and then we'll bring him in.
Hey.
Lou's acclaimed historical novels include Courting Mr. Lincoln, Roosevelt's Beast, The School of Night, The Black Tower, The Pale Blue Eye, and Mr. Timothy, as well as the highly praised young adult novel, Lucky Strikes. A New York Times notable author, he's been nominated for both the Edgar and Dagger Awards, and his story, Banana Triangle 6, was chosen for the best American mystery stories in 2018. His reviews and articles have appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and Salon. An instructor at George Washington University, he's a board member for the PEN Faulkner Foundation and the author of the popular Downton Abbey recipes for the New York Times. He's also, in the immortal words of Mick Jagger, a man of wealth and taste. And he's my father's new favorite author. So my father's seen both Lit Fest and is a fanboy. So Lou, you've got the Murphy clan in the palm of your hands. Welcome to.
It's great to be here, and hello to Mr. Murphy too.
Thank you. He's gonna
wherever he is. Where is he currently?
He's in Reston. He'll be watching this once it goes up. He actually said to me, "Make sure you prepare for this." Like he's taking it very seriously. So
don't fuck around with it the way you usually do.
Exactly. All right, we're on the clock.
Oh my God! Okay, go.
All right, Lou. The first book that made you want to be a writer, or a book that changed your life?
I would say I'm going to say The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, which I first read, and this is the key point, as a classic comic book, and I don't. They haven't been around. You know what I'm talking about, Sean?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
They had classic comic books, so I read it as a comic book. I was completely hooked because, and then I that was my gateway drug to reading Twain actual prose, and then I moved on to Huckleberry Finn and Prince and Pauper and everything. I was such a Mark Twain fan, but it was Tom Sawyer that got me hooked. And I'm one of those weird people hate. Literary critics hate in Huckleberry Finn when Tom Sawyer comes in sort of the last third of the book, and that was my favorite part because it's like, well, yes, because Tom Sawyer needs to come back.
Yeah, you were old school. A funny commonality, I'm sure there's a lot of writers of our generation that would relate to this. I read Frankenstein as a classic comic.
Yes.
And of course, having seen the movie as a fourth grader, and then decided to tackle the novel, which was a huge mistake at that age. The novel is not easygoing for a young kid.
But the comic books were very literate. They incorporated a lot of the original prose, but they had these cool drawings, and it just was a wonderful gateway to just sort of literature for a preteen kid. I love them.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's such a wonderful touchstone for us. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Who would you say your most profound artistic influence is?
I'm going to have to go, even despite what I just said about Twain, I would have to go with Charles Dickens. And kind of the other touchstone of my youth was this, I talked about this with Miss Beth Ann Patrick, actually, for the book she edited, The Books That Changed My Life. And she interviewed me for that book. And this was it was a hardback. It's weird. It had a red cordovan cover, and it had this ribbon that you use to keep your place. Back in the days when they had ribbons with books, right? So, and it smelled wonderful. So it was this whole package of things. But at that point, I was able to appreciate Dickens, and I just reveled in it. And that was my gateway to Dickens, who really was, I think, still the most influential author in my work today. I just revered him. And I also love the challenge that David Copperfield lays down in that first line, to be the hero of your own life. That's something that I aspire to myself. And it's such a wonderful way to put it, So David Copperfield.
So I will say, if you had given me 3 guesses, I think I might have picked Dickens as one of the. So
well, I did my little Dickens homage in Mr. Timothy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm both delighted and not surprised. For that. All right, here's an impossible one that we have a lot of fun with: an album or movie or both that you recommend without reservation.
Gosh, okay, album. I'm just going to say quickly, the White Album.
Yeah.
The White Album is so far and away my favorite Beatles album and favorite album ever. And I don't even feel the need to explain why. You just have to just live in it for as long as I did. I would just listen to it hours on end when I was a kid. But movie, I know this is an odd choice. My favorite movie probably is Sunset Boulevard, which is a 1950 kind of, gosh, how to describe it? A Hollywood noir. If you haven't seen it, but most people have, right? Who'll be watching this, but it's about a silent movie star who's basically gone around the bend, and this sort of cynical screenwriter who's kind of helping her and also has a very complicated relationship with her. And it's just so dark and funny and weird. And I can't believe that it even got made in 1950 Hollywood. It's so strange. And it has Gloria Swanson, of course, William Holden, and I never get tired of watching it. And at the same time, it also seems to be a rather cruel movie. So I don't know what it says about me that I like it so much, but it's just so dark, so funny, and and nothing like it had ever been made or has ever been made since. I love it. I could never get enough of Sunset Boulevard.
Right
on. The musical sucks. Don't watch the musical. It sucks. But the movie is still great.
Right on. And I hope that's a nudge for people that have heard that movie name checked and never checked it out. You should check it out because it's.
Yes, and all of Billy Wilder is canon. He's phenomenal. Yeah.
So you alluded this a little bit with David Copperfield. So I'm going to make you pick another one. And if you.
Okay, damn it.
How about the best first or last line in any book ever?
I am going to go with The Postman Always Rings Twice by James Cain. The first line is, "They threw me off the hay truck at noon." That is a kind of, it's not like a stunning first sentence, but I just love how expressive it is. It's one syllable words. These are Anglo-Saxon words, so it's that hard-boiled world, but it just immediately establishes where we are. This is a poor guy. This is the Depression. He doesn't even have enough money to stay on a hay truck, right? He's that far down. So we have a guy who's just so, beaten down, and that's how the story begins. And I don't know. I find that first sentence just unbelievably revealing and evocative, and I just love it. I love James Cain. In fact, I'm currently working through Mildred Pierce, which I'd never read before. So. He's terrific.
So 2 great movies made from his books, Mildred Pierce.
Yes, his movies always did very well. I think Double Indemnity was his too, right? Yeah, I think Raymond Chandler wrote the screenplay. Yeah, so and like Dickens, actually, they both dramatize beautifully. They both do a wonderful job on the screen.
Right on. Okay. Yeah. How about an underrated author you'd like to give a shout out
to? Since we're in noir, since we're in that world, I'm going to put a plug in for Donald Westlake. Is that a guy? Is that a name you remember? Sure. He was a crime writer, and he was insanely prolific. Like sort of this Georges Simenon level of prolific. Like I think he wrote over 100 books. I think he had 4 different pseudonyms too, just because it just kept churning. But what I loved about his stuff was beautifully constructed, but also managed to say profound things. And there was a book that came out sort of later in his career, I want to say the late 80s or early 90s, called The Axe. And it's about this guy who he's desperate and needs this job. And he's so desperate that he systematically kills off the other, 3 or 4 applicants for the job, and they live all around the country, right? So he has to travel there and has to figure out how to kill them. And it's so dark, but it also says so much about living in a capitalist economy, and it says so much about the psychological impact of having to compete you know, and this was, I assume there was some economic downturn happening when it was written. So anyway, The Axe is just to me, one of the great sort of, I guess crime novels is what you call it. It says so much. It reminds me of Richard Price. You know, I think his stuff is so much richer and deeper than simply a crime novel or a thriller. It just has a lot to say, but he hides it. It doesn't feel messagey, right? It just, you're enjoying the story, and then it's later you think, God, that was pretty intense. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it because I haven't read The Axe, so now that's going to go on
there we go.
Leaning Tower of Pisa books to be read list.
Here we go. I got one of those too.
So we already established this, but I you know, no spoiler necessary. The question I love to ask: why haven't you read Moby Dick, or what classic novel have you been meaning to get around to?
I have read Moby Dick, as we established,
Yep.
but I had to be. I had been laid off at that time, so I had acres of time extending through on every side of me. So I thought, well, now is the time to read Moby Dick, and I'm so glad I did. I actually loved it. I loved it. I think I also read Anna Karenina around that time too. I had lots of time, and so I love both of those books. They're both very special to me. Maybe in part because I treasure that, in a weird way. I treasure that time when I was unemployed and didn't know when my next step was coming from. I could just sort of immerse myself in books in a way that I haven't really been able to before or since. So the two books that I have not read, and I feel a little bad about both. The first is Ulysses by James Joyce. In college, our class was given 6 weeks to get through Ulysses. And I tried so hard. And I probably got through about halfway, and I was just like, I can't. So I skipped ahead to the end of Molly Bloom's monologue, and I still couldn't get through the monologue. So I think there should be a support group for people who have not gotten through Ulysses. And then the other one is Infinite Jest. And I had a week in the summer with nothing to do. So I thought, I'm just going to read this big fucking, famous book. And I got through about a third of it. And then just hit a wall. I ran into somebody many years later. I said, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I only got through a third. I felt so bad. I'm still apologizing. He said, no, you've read it all. It just keeps happening again and again for the rest. You already know what the book is. It's like, oh, okay. So those two.
I've heard a very similar from someone that has read it and basically said the same thing. You don't have to read the whole thing. You get it.
Yeah, no, I feel that was such a relief to learn that.
So I have to quick affirmation and agreement. I have such fond memeries of the intensity of grad school. I read Anna Karenina in a week,
wow.
It was insane.
Wow.
I had to, but it was. Do you talk about immersing yourself? There's nothing like that, and I love.
Oh yeah, I don't think our lives allow for that anymore. Maybe our brains, being middle-aged people that we are, I don't think our brains allow for that kind of full-in just body dive.
I think it's a combination of being in grad school, and it was a pre-internet era. I mean, it was just
point. No phones, bugging you, and yeah. No, it's true.
So yeah, look, we're aging ourselves horribly.
I know. I had the summer after college. I call it my Henry James summer. It's kind of like a boyfriend, right? It's like I had my Henry James summer where I just sat around reading Henry James books, and it was the same thing, just like deep dive. Came back up again 3 months later, and a better person for it. So
I don't think there's any writer that hasn't had at least one infatuation with a writer where you go through the entire catalog and then are changed by it.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you say that there's a single theme or issue that your work tries to address?
The problem there is tries. I think I'm the last person to know what that is. I almost feel like the author is the last person to ask.
Yeah.
In that case, I've been told that I dwell a bit on fathers and sons. I've been told that I dwell a bit on alternative families. But to me, what that stuff was just unconscious. So in my case, I just try to tell a particular story that interests me, and then I leave it to people to kind of discern whatever threads bind them. But I'm never conscious of, now I will write on the theme of blah blah blah. I'm just trying to tell a good story. So.
Well, for such a brilliant writer, that is the least pretentious answer, which is why you're such a lovely, lovable person. Enough said.
Oh, thank you.
All right. How about writing routines? Do you believe in them? Do you have one?
I totally believe in them. I think that because it's another word for discipline, right? It's the discipline of writing, and you can't be a writer without it. So I do have one. I treat it I guess like a lot of the people you talk to, I treat it like a job. You know, I get up every morning at an early hour, and I try to be ready to go around 9 or so. And I'm on this laptop, right? This is my work world. Now, there was a pre-COVID routine where I would go out to local coffee houses and kind of hang out, because I do need a certain amount of white noise, and I need a certain amount of people around me, but not talking to me, if that makes sense. And occasionally somebody will come and try to engage me in conversation, and I have to put out all those social cues that we do. It's like, you know, looking at my screen, and yes. So, but now since COVID, I've had to be working alone more, which has been an interesting discipline because I'm not as used to that. But it's good too. I mean, there are moments where I've just written in silence, which is sort of in a weird way a new thing to me. But I do find it harder to work from home. Oddly, I need to sort of travel out just a little bit into the world to make it happen. But I treat it like a job, and I write till I'm done. So.
Right on. And as those of you that are not, for whatever inexplicable reason, familiar with Mr. Bayard's work, his productivity is vindication for this routine, because something's working.
Well, nine books, right? 9 published books, and yes, a 10th on the way. Yes, so thank you for that.
Right on. All right, so real quick, what about writer's block? Thoughts about this mythical thing?
Yeah, is it mythical? I don't know. I somehow think Freud came up with that idea, but I can't afford to believe in writer's block because I live by deadlines, right? I'm a professional writer, not just a novelist, but I have you know, so many balls sort of, you know, in the air at any moment. So many deadlines that I can't believe in writer's block because I can't afford it. I got a kid in college. I've got a mortgage, you know, so I know that stuff needs to happen. The one exception I make, because I've experienced this, is sometimes I've worked, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I started working on a novel about witchcraft based on an ancestor of mine. It was set in the world of the Puritans. And I couldn't figure out a way in, because the Puritans are fucking weird people. They really don't resemble us in any way. We talk about the Puritan work ethic. They lived in a completely different world than ours. It was a supernatural world, right, where the devil walks the land, and God, and they're all, and witchcraft trials were like Homeland Security. People believed that this stuff was really happening. So it's just a very different world. And every morning I would wake up going, oh God, and I would put it off and put it off. And I suddenly realized, now this idea isn't taking hold. But it's funny because after I kind of threw it, you know, it's like, never mind. I found, as often happens when you stop thinking about something, a solution presents itself. So I now have a way in, which I may come back to. But that was, to me, the writer's block of that part was just saying, this is not the right idea. This is not what you should be working on right now. Yeah. But otherwise, you know, it's just about sitting down and getting it done, it's not easy. It's hard, right?
Yeah, I can't afford to have writer's block. I think that's the best answer we've had yet.
I can't.
That could be the title of your memoir. I couldn't afford.
There we are. I can't afford to have writer's block. Yes.
How about a significant setback, either artistic or otherwise, that shaped the writer you've become?
Yeah, you know, I think I go back to, this was 2014. I had written, I just published a book called Roosevelt's Beast, which is about Teddy Roosevelt and his son in the Brazilian jungle. And it was my last book with a particular publisher. And it was just clear to me it was a weird thing where my editor had been fired and I was one of those orphan authors. So anyway, so I did this New York book launch at Mysterious Bookshop in the Village. And there were 5 people there. One of them was my then agent, who left halfway through to have dinner with a more illustrious client. None of them was my publisher. They were a 10-minute cab drive away. Nobody was there. And I remember walking out thinking, God, I could just stop right now, because it's not like nobody's demanding, nobody's banging on my door saying, where's the next one? You know, so it was a very demoralizing experience. And I remember thinking that moment that I really had to kind of hunker down for a little bit and decide, is this something I want to keep doing? Is it, because it's a hard business, as you know, it's a really hard business. Yeah. So do I want to stay at the table? And it took me a little bit of time to figure out that yes, I do. So I got a new agent and new publisher. So I made the changes necessary, but it was a moment where I thought, God, I could just stop right now. And God knows I know writers who have. They've just been so demoralized by this business that they've just kind of stepped away, and very gifted writers. So it saddens me really that the business makes it so hard to hold on sometimes.
Well, Lou, if you had stopped writing, it would have changed your life, and it would have changed Jack Murphy's life. So thank God you didn't
Jack,
stop.
my boy Jack. Yes. So I'm glad I did. No, I'm glad I did. And actually, it was a good test of character. You know, it's like, what am I willing to do to kind of to stay in this weird business? But it also made me realize this is what I want to do. This is what I was meant to do.
Right.
So.
That's right. Well, so that tees up, I think that's a great segue to, how would you explain or define what literary success means to you?
Well, being a neurotic, as many writers are, literary success is whatever I haven't yet achieved. So basically that means the goalposts are constantly moving. When I first started out, it was just getting published. That was my, yeah. And then I got published, and it's like, oh, it'd be nice to get reviewed in the New York Times, right? And then I got reviewed in the New York Times. It would be nice to get a bestseller. So I just keep moving the goalposts, and it means that I'm never in my mind successful, which is just a strange neurotic thing that I have. But I suppose the other way to define it is that I'm still doing it, and I'm still getting paid at some level to do it. And people are, your boy, is it Jack?
Jack.
Yeah, your boy Jack's reading. Pops is reading. So that to me is success, and I try to linger in that world rather than the world of that. I'm still, I've never had a New York Times bestseller. I've never had, I still had a movie made, right? So there are all these things that haven't happened. So I try to, as best I can, to look at the stuff that is actually there, and then I have control over it. So.
Well, I find that refreshing and very, very sane and human. You're talking about, the balance between discipline, getting the work done, believing in yourself, and also having ambition. I mean, that's people that say they don't want readers. I mean, maybe right. But what's the point? Like, you want to connect.
What's the point? Of course, why write unless people read it, right? Yeah, I think we're kidding ourselves if we.
All right. So, second to last question. Is there something that you wish you had known 10 or even 20 years ago as a writer?
Gosh, I think "hold on" would have been the message I would have told myself then. I think I would have liked to know that it'd still be making go of it now today, but because that wasn't always clear. I guess the one thing I've learned, we talked about ambition, and we both came out of literary worlds and English degrees and all that stuff. And when I started out, I had fancy ideas of, trying to be the next Saul Bellow or some writer that I really admired. And I realized that my talent, what I consider now to be my talent, is that I'm a good storyteller. And that's not something that academia particularly looks kindly on. They don't, this is why I didn't get a master's or a PhD in English, is because all the things I love about reading, story and character and author's style, personality, are nothing that academia cares about, or at least didn't then. So I would have told myself that this is what you're good at, and just keep doing that, because the world needs good stories as much as anything. And I think good storytellers are as rare as good artists the real, artists, whatever. So, and it is its own kind of art. So again, in terms of learning to appreciate what's there on the page, it's like it's taken me a long time to figure out what I'm actually sort of good at, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. Again, find that very refreshing and very human. Okay, finally, do you have a 1-minute exhortation for a younger writer looking for advice?
Yeah, 1 minute. I would do it. I would say only do it if you can't imagine doing anything else. I would say the same thing about any art. It only makes sense. The validation. This is why I teach at George Washington University, and occasionally I'll have a student ask me if do I have what it takes, and it's like, I cannot give you the validation because it is such a tough business. So, and everybody, there's a Sondheim song called Everybody Says Don't, right? And that's what publishing is. Everybody's saying don't, no, stop, can't. So there has to be something in you that says, yes, I must, yes, or just, I must, I have to keep doing this. And that's the only way to get through the rejection, which is enormous, and the judgment, which is built into the whole system. So only do it if you can't think of anything else to do. Does that seem like too dark a note to end on?
Actually, I don't think it's dark at all. And I was just going to say, that reminded me, I read this wonderful, I think it was in Esquire, the whole Things I've Learned. And James Harrison said something like, as he became older, he had less patience. And he said, I ask, if a young writer comes to me, I ask him right away, are you ready to give everything over to this? And if they don't answer yes immediately, I don't have any time for them. That could almost be interpreted as pretentious, but I think that's from someone that had done it his entire life.
Yeah.
What it took. And basically it was like, I'm not going to bullshit you. If you're not willing to put this at the forefront, you're not going to succeed. Or if you do succeed, you're going to be half-assing it. Right.
And of course, life won't allow us, we have to earn a living, right? So when you start out, you're going to be having a full-time job, you're going to be, doing all this stuff. So are you going to be making that hour? Are you going to be waking up an hour early or staying up an hour late or just making it happen? And that's the sign of your vocation. It's not kind of what you think or not. Is it happening, almost in a helpless way? You can't imagine doing anything other than this, because that's the only way, you can succeed at this. It's a tough business. I guess that's what I say. I've said this multiple times, but it's tough to get in. It's tough to stay in. It's tough to stay relevant in. So there has to be some core of you that just thinks, I can't imagine doing anything else.
That's right. Well, this, I'm not surprised. I knew the conversation was going to go along these lines. We were going to see the wisdom, the genuineness, the refreshing perspective. But it makes me very happy that if there are people watching that have not yet discovered the great Lou Bayard, check him out, and you might become another Jack Murphy and become a fanboy.
That's right. You can
and that's what we're all aspiring to, right? We've got some fanboys and girls along the way.
That's right.
So, Lou, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being a friend of 1455. You will always be part of the literary festivals, because as I like to often say, half jokingly, it's like the mafia. Once we get you, you can't get out. So you're family now, but we look forward to seeing you again.
Well, I got the horse's head in the mail today, so I know.
I do like a seahorse, the kinder, gentler. I don't have the budget for the the whole horse.
They're easier to pin down too, I think, if you're gonna.
That's right. But I think it's a misdemeanor, not a felony, so it's you're all around. Well, good luck with the new project. Keep plugging away, and we'll talk to you again soon for sure.
Great. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you.
Good to see you.
Take care.
Take care.